Demonstrations against the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration have spread to multiple cities across the U.S. Protests against raids to capture and deport undocumented migrants have continued for a fourth night in Los Angeles. Tensions have been rising since Saturday, when Trump deployed 2,000 National Guards to the city to crush protests over raids to deport migrants. Over the past few hours, the U.S. government has ordered the deployment of an additional 2,000 National Guard and 700 Marines in the city. California has sued the U.S. government, arguing the deployments are illegal and a violation of the state's sovereignty.
We need to stop the raids. This should not be happening in our city. It is not warranted, and the only thing it does is contribute to chaos. This was chaos that was started at Washington, D.C. On Thursday, the city was peaceful. On Friday, it was not, because of the intervention of the federal government.
Protesters have blocked roads in the U.S. city of Dallas. Demonstrators held signs and waved flags to defy Trump's immigration crackdown. Police used tear gas, rubber bullets and flashbangs to contain the crowd. Similar protests also took place in New York. The demonstrations were largely peaceful, with protesters demanding an end to deportations. 24 people were arrested during a sit-in at Trump Tower in New York. Well, Al Jazeera's Phil Lavelle is live for us now in Los Angeles. Phil, so just bring us up to date with what's happening on the streets now where you are. How is it compared to yesterday? And we've also seen protests in other cities as well, haven't we?
Yeah, and bear with me a second. Somebody just threw a firework a second ago, so things are a little bit hairy here. Yeah, we're seeing protests here in LA. We're also seeing those protests in Dallas as well. Now, what's interesting about Dallas is its political makeup, right? It's Texas. It is as red as it comes, and therefore the law there outlaws sanctuary cities. Those are those cities that refuse to provide assistance to those federal bodies who are rounding up migrants. So LA is a sanctuary city, Dallas isn't. So it's quite an interesting difference there. But back to what's happening here in Los Angeles. This is the chaos, you might say, that Karen Bass, the mayor, just referred to in that clip. The police are lined up here. They've been moving steadily through this area of downtown, pushing the protesters back. In terms of how this protest looks, compared to last night, it is a completely different protest. You know, we haven't had the burning cars. The numbers are much, much lower. You know, there were hundreds and hundreds of people last night. Tonight, it feels like the police have got a much better handle on the situation. There are hundreds of LAPD officers there. The choppers are overhead, and they are managing to keep the crowds controlled. They are firing rubber bullets, though some members of the crowd are firing fireworks at police officers, and they're firing them into the crowd as well. A few times we've had to run because they've come so close and they've exploded nearby. There are people here who are genuinely protesting, although we've also seen that there are some people who are trying to rile the police up. They're kind of getting in there with their scooters. They're trying to create as much noise as they can and really amp the situation up. But at the moment, it is reasonably peaceful. We've seen at least one person be arrested, but it seems to be reasonably peaceful and much, much quieter than it was 24 hours ago.
And Phil, so an additional 2,000 National Guard, also 700 Marines are being deployed. Is this likely then to intensify that battle between Governor Gavin Newsom and President Trump?
Absolutely. I mean, Gavin Newsom is furious. He was furious that President Trump deployed those 2,000 National Guard in the first place. He says that it was a violation of the 10th Amendment. That's why the state of California is suing him. And he's actually gone on social media and shown photographs of the conditions that those National Guard are sleeping in, saying you didn't send these guys up with anywhere to sleep, with no food, no water, and you say you respect the troops and the people who protect our country. And they are suing him over this. Like I say, they say it's a violation of the 10th Amendment. And the state of California has got $2.5 billion set aside for lawsuits against the Trump administration. That's something that they planned at the start of the year to effectively, you might say, Trump-proof California, because they knew there would be all kinds of legal fights against the administration. The issue is when those Marines are deployed, if they do end up on the streets. We know that up to 700 are being mobilized at Camp Pendleton, which is south of Los Angeles. That takes a whole different spin onto things, though, because then you have the prospect of active soldiers on the streets of Los Angeles, both Mayor Bass and Governor Newsom say that will completely inflame the situation. They already said that there was no problem here really until Donald Trump got involved. But they say, and many here will also echo the sentiment, that Donald Trump wants this fight with Gavin Newsom. He wants to give California that metaphorical bloody nose. He wants to put Gavin Newsom in his place. Gavin Newsom has already said that he is prepared to challenge Donald Trump. In fact, when Tom Honan, the former ICE director, who is now the immigration czar, said he was thinking of arresting Gavin Newsom said, come on, bring it on, let's do it, let's have this fight. This is probably going to be much worse before it gets better. Maybe not in terms of protests, because we're not seeing what we saw last night, but in terms of the political fight, because both sides, both Democrat and Republican, are really up for a fight here with each other.
All right, Al Jazeera's Phil Lavelle there, live for us on the streets of downtown Los Angeles. Phil, for now, thank you. Well, Melanie Sloan is a former federal prosecutor and is an attorney with an expertise in government ethics. She says the California governor has grounds to resist Trump's National Guard deployment.
While Trump can do it, there has to be there has to be a bunch of conditions that have to be met. There has to be basically an insurrection against a federal authority. And here we have the chief of police and others saying that they could contain this. They don't need this help, that there is no active rebellion here. And so without those kind of things, I think there's a pretty good chance that Gavin Newsom might indeed prevail. And I'm sure they're going in some kind of emergency litigation, asking for a preliminary injunction to stop Trump from bringing these people in. And particularly now with the 700 additional Marines, it's not clear what, if anything, those people will be able to do. I mean, the only real role for them is to protect federal property, because they are not allowed to make arrests of regular citizens or even of immigrants. That's just, they don't have a law enforcement task, because there's another law called the Posse Comitatus Act that actually forbids them from engaging in regular law enforcement activities. So it's a big question about what these additional 700 Marines who will be armed will be doing, and will they just stoke the flames, which really is what it seems the president wants. Because also what we're seeing today in most of Los Angeles, people are just going around about their business. This is not throughout the entire city of Los Angeles, which is huge. It's a very contained, small area where this riot is happening.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.